Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night to everybody involved here on this episode of Unidentified History. Very pleased to be coming back at you guys here today to actually go into a historical deep dive for the first time in a while. I've been covering a lot of the conferences like the UAP Summit, the James Fox event, Conscious Life Expo. Tunney and I reviewed Age of Disclosure back in November. There's been other stuff that's been going on Unidentified History. This is the first time we've circled back to do an actual historical deep dive in quite a while. And as our good friend Patrick O'Dowd would say, boy howdy, have we hit the ground running on this one, because what this is going to evolve into is essentially a two-part exploration, I would say, of the summer of 1947, which is where UFOs really become a part of the lexicon of the world. There are two massive events that happened in 1947, and some other and related events, some sub events, and some things like that. On this episode, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take a deep dive into the event that started, that coined the phrase flying saucer, even if he didn't mean for it to be a flying saucer. And we will get into that as we go along. But we're going to be talking about the Kenneth Arnold sighting and some other things that are related to that. Hopefully, it should be a very good episode. I'm thrilled to be joined here by my good friend, my compadre in all things podcasting, the one and only PC Tunney. Tunney, how are you doing, my friend? Thank you for being a part of this. I'm just going to say it, man. This is like the Attitude Era of ufology right here. The 1940 is 50 years before the Attitude Era, and there's a lot of similarities because this is really where it all comes to be. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's Friday. You got to be happy about that. We got some really interesting, important subject matter here. I am prepped and ready to go.
Yeah. It's going to be a very interesting episode. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just looking at James Iandoli had sent me a message, wanted to talk to me about Riverside. I will have to tell James everything that I can tell him about that, because it is definitely a very good platform. Highly recommend it. Yeah, we got a really good episode here today. We're going to take the deep dive into the Kenneth Arnold sighting. Before we get into that, I got a lot of videos and things like that this is going to be a very much more interactive episode than probably you've been used to, Tunney. I've done a couple of these on my own flying solo, like the James Fox one had a lot of videos and things like that. This episode's going to be really heavy on that. So it's going to be very interactive. A lot of people, deal better with the visualization of things. And of course, as you know, I did a pretty detailed rundown of and write-up of what we're going to be doing that will be posted on the Attitude of Aggression website. It is a little bit shorter than I thought. Like some of the other ones have gone on for 12 pages. I'm like, hey, this one's only 6 pages. I feel concise almost. To start this episode, we're going to touch on a few news stories because things are very weird out here in UAP land. And we're going to get into some of that, but I want to start off with, we've got another documentary that's coming out on April 3rd, and it is a new take on the Bob Lazar story, S4. And I'm going to play, you're going to love this, Tunney, because you haven't seen this trailer, but pretend this is Bandwagon Nerds, and you get to watch this trailer here. I'm going to show you the trailer for the upcoming, it's coming out in just about a week, S4, the Bob Lazar story. And if I can find out, this is always the fun part, is figure out. I've already got it all ready to go. Look at me. I'm almost prepared. So anyway, in about 3 months, I'll have this wired down to the point that I know how to do it, and easy. But let's take a look at this. This is the trailer for the upcoming S4, the Bob Lazar documentary. Let's get, okay, here we go.
Physical evidence now exists which proves that there is life elsewhere, and at least one form of that life has been here. As of 1989, that evidence was in the custody of the United States government. Between December of 1988 and April of 1989, I worked as a senior staff physicist in what has to be the most secret project in history. My job in this program was to be part of a back engineering team. This particular disk, appeared to be in excellent condition, and because of its sleek appearance, I nicknamed it the Sport Model. The goal in this program was to see if the technology of the disk could be duplicated with Earth materials. To start up the reactor, of course, we need some element 115. In fact, you need 223 grams, machined into a wedge like this. The program out at S4 consisted of 3 projects: Project Galileo, Project Sidekick, and Project Looking Glass.
The file on top was Project Galileo, and as it turned out, that's the project that I was part of. And that clearly referred to reverse engineering a recovered alien spacecraft.
Just cannot be a secret from anyone, not just the American people, but the rest of the world.
All this stuff is something that happened to him. It's not who he is.
They're doing everything they can to keep this information secret.
That's empirical evidence. I saw a craft to do that, thanks to him.
Now this story spills, and the world changed.
Tunney, I know you're not, obviously, I mean, I think, you're not as familiar with the Bob Lazar story as I am, but you know enough about it to know that he's a scientist who was out at S4, out at Area 51. There's Bob's story. Bob is a very polarizing figure. Some people believe him. Some people think he's full of shit. I tend to believe more of his story than I doubt. There are some holes in it, to be sure. But I don't know. What do you think of the trailer? Is that something that interests you, makes you a little bit more interested to find out what's going on with this? Or
It's a lot of the questions we've been asking in doing this and starting this project and series on attitude of aggression is, are we able to make this stuff? Are the things we have what we created, or is it the reverse engineering, or is it the ability to try and figure out what you've recovered? Now, the problem too is, and we're going to get into it with what we're talking about today, is that if the government doesn't want you to be credible, they're going to find ways to discredit whatever you have in whatever way they can. They're more powerful than you are, right? So they can make you look foolish, or they can prop you up, right? So it's weird because now we're maybe getting to this stage where there may be some disclosure, not full disclosure, but
wow,
it's really seems very far away from getting any certainty from the U.S. government at the very least. But I would also say I can't necessarily blame the government for trying to be in control if this is necessarily what's going on. The lack of openness may be for our own protection.
Well, I think there's
Lack of transparency. That's the word I was looking for.
I mean, there's certainly an element of the whole thing that we've talked about many times, the whole notion that we can't handle the truth. And whatever the truth is likely far stranger and more troubling than I think humanity probably contemplates. Does that mean that we don't have a right to know? No, I don't think so. Is it something that maybe we're better off not knowing, like a be careful what you ask for situation? Possibly. But like you're saying, there seems to be a push in some direction, assuming the world lasts at the rate we're going, that they're going to disclose some level of this. It may be the most rudimentary and basic aspect of things that, hey, we're not alone and that's all we can really tell you because we don't really know a lot of the other details. Trump's ordering the disclosure of files. Obama admitted a few weeks ago that aliens are real. I just haven't seen them. So you've got all that. But, as far as this, I've seen Jeremy Corbell did a documentary on Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, the Bob Lazar story. And so this is going to be probably an even deeper dive on that. And I think it's Luigi Venturelli, I think is the name of the director for this thing. He's done a hell of a job with this thing. I know he's been talking to some people making the rounds on podcasts. It's going to be really, Bob's a fascinating dude. And if you've ever watched the episode he did with Joe Rogan, where he's explaining all this stuff, Bob's passed lie detector tests and his story since 1989 has never changed. It's never wavered. Yeah, there are holes in his educational background. Where he went to school, there's no record of it, that sort of thing. But then again, there's some things that people made up about him that have been proven to be absolutely false. So in that respect, oh my God, Rey Cash is in here today too? Jesus.
I don't know what the fuck we talking about. I'm here to support my friend Dave.
Patrick also says threatening law action for playing trailers on a show that's not BWN, by the way.
Patrick's threatening that? Okay.
He said, you'll be hearing from my attorneys, trailers on a podcast, that's gimmick infringement. Hashtag BWN for life.
Wow.
But legit.
Well, Patrick,
Wow.
I gotta inform you though, Bandwagon Nerds likely was not the first show to ever show a trailer.
No, that was definitely not an original Dave Unger idea there. That's for sure.
But legit, two things. One, I was gonna get on the YouTube and just fuck with y'all like I normally do, but I thought show up. But also two, in all sincerity, I know nothing about the stuff you talk about. I have some interest in it, but like it is your world. But I love my friend Dave, and I have never supported him by coming on the show. So I figured I got some time. Let me show up.
Hey, I appreciate it, Ray. You're probably going to learn some stuff here today. We're going to get into some weird things, and we just watched the trailer for S4, the Bob Lazar story, which I'm sure you probably don't know a whole lot about Bob. But, you know, Bob is the one who claimed, I mean, you know what Area 51 is, obviously.
For sure. I've been to Roswell, I've been around it, so I have an idea of I know Area 51 very well.
Yes. Bob Lazar is the reason why we know about Area 51 and that sort of things.
Bet.
The reverse engineering program, Element 115, whatever the hell's going on out there. S4 is an even more secretive aspect of the whole area out there. But we just watched a trailer for the documentary that's coming out on April 3rd. It looks like it's going to be good. It looks like, Tunney, I don't know if you're going to check it out or not, but I usually
Where's
drag
that releasing?
Amazon. They're going to put it out on Amazon. So,
and it is regular streaming. You have to pay for it, right?
I don't know.
No, usually you got to pay for these.
Okay.
Usually though, they're going to charge maybe $15 or something.
So
like
rent
that,
it, just another movie that's had to be rented.
Well, you buy it for like $15 or something. But I mean, when you got money like you got, Ray, it doesn't really matter. So
who you talking Mysterio? Mr. 5 Gucci mask at the front door? That's not me.
But it'll be worth checking out because it'll give a whole new aspect of this thing. The second news story I wanted to talk about is this very strange situation that I think I've mentioned, and I mentioned it in the Unidentified History chat or whatever remains of it that I can still access in my suspended state, that there's a situation involving a general, William Neil McCasland, who has vanished into thin air. Literally, it's been almost a month exactly. He disappeared on February 28th. Highly decorated general. He was somebody who has been long rumored to be a part of the UAP issue, was involved with Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy, heavily involved with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which we'll talk about more on the next episode when we discuss Roswell. But let me play for you guys a little something here that I got. So I got this from Ryan Sprague from Somewhere in the Skies. He did this pretty cool little short on this thing. And I want to go ahead and play that for you guys here. And then we can kind of touch bases and go from there. So this is from Ryan Sprague, Somewhere in the Skies. And let's get into this thing here.
It began, as so many of these stories often do, with something deceptively simple. A man left his house and has yet to return.
The search continues for a missing retired Air Force general who disappeared from an Albuquerque neighborhood last week. Now we've learned federal investigators are helping in that search.
William Neil McCasland was last seen near his Foothills area home on Friday near Tramway and Academy. Today, volunteers along with investigators from BCSO and the FBI were canvassing the neighborhood.
We walked right by there Friday morning. Would have been around 11 o'clock and nothing out of the ordinary in the area. So it's strange.
The deeper one looks into the disappearance of Major General William Neil McCasland, the more that simplicity collapses into something layered, interconnected, and deeply unsettling. What first appeared to be a missing persons case begins to unravel into a network of people, programs, and places operating at the very edge of what we're told exists, where advanced aerospace research, national security, and decades of UFO speculation all quietly overlap. At the center of it all sits Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a place long associated with both groundbreaking science and some of the most persistent and controversial secrets in American history. And as we'll soon see, William Neil McCasland wasn't the only one who vanished and had connections to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He was just the latest. This is the missing general, the scientists, and the Wright-Patterson web.
So, yeah, some strange stuff going on there. This guy disappears. He leaves his, He leaves his phone behind. He leaves his wallet behind, but he takes his glasses and a .38 caliber revolver and just vanishes into thin air. It is a very, very, very strange situation, to say the very least, as far as like how this whole thing went down and that whole thing. I did post something and I wanted to kind of go through it because Tom Thompson, known as Cortex Zero on X, he posted this, which like touches on what Ryan talked about in the depth of what's going on here and other people who have disappeared. So let me read through this for you guys. Anthony Chavez, 78, a retired longtime Los Alamos National Laboratory employee, disappeared from his Los Alamos home in May of 2025. His car was still there. Inside, his wallet, keys, and cigarettes were left on the table. Detectives found no signs of a struggle, and cadaver dogs turned up nothing. He has never been found. Weeks later, Melissa Cassius, a Los Alamos National Laboratory employee, vanished in Taos County. Her purse, wallet, cash, both cell phones were found at home. Family told the Albuquerque Journal the phones had been factory reset. Surveillance later captured her on foot along New Mexico 518 with a backpack. Search efforts followed, including K-9 units, but the case remains unresolved. Her husband also worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And then, of course, we come here to February 2026. Retired Major General William Neil McCasland disappears from his Albuquerque home, left behind his phone, prescription glasses, wearable devices. Investigators say his wallet, revolver, holster, and red backpack remain unaccounted for. So I got that a little bit mixed up. Authorities canvassed more than 700 homes, searched with dogs, drones, and helicopters. Still no confirmed sighting has established how he left or where he went. So thank you, Tom, for putting that together. That's excellent work, of course. Representative Tim Burchett has speculated that something odd is going on. Those are a little bit too coincidental for my taste. Ray, I'm going to go to you first since you're jumping in here in the deep end on this thing. There's times in ufology and all this stuff where you say, oh, it's conspiracy theory and you're looking at coincidences, but that is remarkably coincidental to have all this connection to Los Alamos and all these people vanish and no trace of any of them?
Yeah. Well, first off, let me say, I love me one of those videos with the whispering guy with the, if you look at the movie to the left. I love those videos. They always pop me hard.
Ryan is excellent at that. He's a very good narrator, and he really gets that dramatic effect out of it.
That'll always pop me hard. Okay, so mind you, novice in this whole situation, coming
That's
at from
more
a
than
fresh,
more than acceptable, Ray.
from a fresh viewpoint. It's natural for people, I think, to look at something that doesn't make sense and try to find a tangible reason for it. Normally, the conversation I'm having this with is about religion, being that I am a pastor's son and strong in my faith and whatnot, because faith is not tangible, right? So I'm used to these conversations. And in this, I'm not a not believer. I believe in the existence of other beings and other worlds. I believe in the tangibility of it. But it's a lot of the times the situations that are, as you say, very coincidental, that give a little bit of skepticism. But we are in a world now where we are more technologically advanced than we ever have been. We're in a world now where we know more than we've ever known. We're in a world now where, forget what the government has said about recently about the existence of UFOs, UAPs, and all that. Just the fact that we can go and with a regular telescope you can buy from Costco can see other worlds that exist. You feel what I'm saying? So like, in that sense, these things make a lot of sense to me. My question is, with all the number of missing persons, with the number of serial killers that we know exist in the country, I'm just speaking United States, that have not and never will be caught, with the number of deaths and people that have been murdered or taken or any of these things nefariously,
Nicely done.
and they'll never be solved. I understand. I don't know if these situations lean towards nefarious means or lean towards they were abducted because of the knowledge they have from other beings. Because I don't even know if that is something that is a disrespectful statement in the world. I don't know. I'm not in it. The idea of alien abductions or UFO abductions or UFO, I don't know if that's even something that has been debunked and is thought of as very, very juvenile amongst the UAP community. I don't know. And if it is, sincerely, I apologize. But I don't know where I stand here because there is a lot of questions and a lot of things that's weird. We know we live in a world, in a country with a government that will do anything and everything they can to shut someone up for whatever information they have. All you gotta do is look at old boy from WikiLeaks that can never come home. Like, it's very, very apparent. We know this. So is this more of a kind of enemy of the state situation and somebody got caught up and told too many state secrets? Or did the people come from whatever X22 and take them and be like, hey, let's go have some conversations? I don't really quite know where what the situation is with that. But the one thing we can all agree, however you stand, something is up here. And it's a little weird.
Yeah, it's the timing is strange as it happens right after Donald Trump says, "Hey, I'm going to disclose these UFO files."
By the way,
And
did
that's,
he
you know,
ever?
this-
Did they ever get released?
They're in the process of gathering them, but that's all just like, I mean, that was supposed to be done at the end of 2023. All Donald did was restate something that had already been said. So he didn't really disclose shit. But the thing is that this happens right, you know, within like a week after Donald Trump makes that announcement. And then this guy goes missing, which his wife has said some really strange sort of things, like saying, you know, he's gone without a trace. Maybe he was taken by the mothership, which is kind of a strange thing for a wife to say about her missing husband. But, you know, people cope with these things differently, that sort of thing. And maybe she's making light of it. But it seems like, you know, there's several things of concern here. One prevailing opinion is that he went into hiding, that he knew that he was going to be targeted and he took off on his own and went into hiding on his own.
And that would make
And when it
sense that
first
he
said-
would leave the wallet if he
Yeah,
was.
I mean, right. I mean, if there's a silver alert had gone out for them, there was some early rumors that he had some cognitive disabilities,
Okay.
things like that. That was not really fleshed out and proven, that was not proven, and that does not seem to be the case. So, you know, that was kind of a red herring. But if he knew he was being targeted, especially like in this day and age where you look at, we got this war going on in Iran and everything in the world is very tenuous right now. A guy with knowledge like that is going to be a target for Iranian terrorists, for Chinese, for Russians, anybody.
sure.
If he's got that kind of knowledge, you can go in there and grab that sort of information. That's a big get for an adversary. So that could be it. It could be that somebody just took all these people involved with Los Alamos and the UFO stuff and said, get them out of here, because the dam is about to burst. I don't know. Tunney, let me go to you and then we'll circle back to Ray. I want to see what Tunney thinks about this and get his thoughts on this.
So immediately you think there's two different executing factors here, either the government or alternate life, right? And the thing with each one is they could both be protecting or trying to get rid of. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the government could easily be trying to protect these people and saying, you need to do this, this, and this right now, and this is the only way we can protect you. Or the government is like coming down, they know they need to get out of hiding, and maybe there's a group that they decided that they knew of and wanted humans that are hiding out, and they join this group of whatever. Now, on the alien side, it could be like a mental calling kind of thing that's just been broadcast, or you know, like an inception in their brain, like given to them from this alternate life force saying, here's what you need to do. This is how it's going to happen.
A mental beacon.
And that could be because they want to get rid of them, or because they think they're allies and would like to further, you know, some information and things of that nature. So that's immediately where my mind went to. Two different driving forces, which could either be doing good or bad for these people. Now, the obvious last thing is these people are crazy. This is all bullshit. And that's, you know, but at the same time, we never found these people.
Weird.
Never
It's weird.
found
And they're
them.
too prominent. They're too prominent to not to be found.
Well, and the thing is, the stories are almost all
Identical.
oddly similar
Yeah.
to the way they're portrayed, right? You've been involved with the government at some level on this subject, and you just left your house and left everything behind.
So
Like, I quit smoking 6 months ago, but the guy who left his cigarettes behind, important was going on. If
No
you're a
doubt.
smoker, you take those with you.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Dave.
What's up,
so
Ray?
I don't know if it is a belief or an accepted fact amongst the UAP community, but I know we've had tons of verifiable sightings. Is there a belief that there has been actual contact?
Yes.
Okay.
I think,
Depends on who you ask, right?
Right.
Well,
That's
yeah,
what I said.
right,
Is that
right.
the belief amongst the community?
I think amongst the community, people like me and most of the people who believe in this stuff, like you mentioned the abduction phenomenon, we do think that there are some valid abduction situations like the Betty and Barney Hill situation. That's one that a lot of people look at, especially the regression therapy that Barney went through and the terror that he experienced or relayed to the hypnotist when he was going through that. On the other hand, though, you talk about abductions, and just this last week, Travis Walton, one of the most famous, you've seen Fire in the Sky, right? Everybody knows that movie is. There's now a belief that one of the guys he was involved with on his deathbed said, we hoaxed the whole thing, which of course brings into the crucible the whole notion of, well, Jesus Christ, did Travis Walton really fake this whole thing? Sure doesn't seem that way. Has he profited off of this for many years? Probably. But, at the same time, I think most of the UAP community does think that there has been an abduction phenomenon. But ironically enough, you don't hear about abductions that much anymore. It's almost like they got their bag limit, right? Like hunters get their bag limit or their catch limit. They tagged enough humans, they don't need to do it anymore because you don't really hear about abductions happening that much anymore.
And that's why I'm asking, because coming again from a novice perspective with the tangible, logical thought process.
Well, you're perfect because we need it balances. That's what this show is about. It's about, DJ's been more of a team I want to believe. Tunney is a little bit skeptical, but there's things that he buys into. I'm more of the true believer, but I'm not an idiot. And then, we get you who just kind of dipping your toe in the water here tonight.
I'm naturally pragmatic. So, I want to see it as it comes, and I'm a logical thinker. So it's got to make sense to me. Now, being a faith-based person, sense is a very fluid thing, right? It doesn't have to physically be, I can touch it to make sense, but it has to make sense in my mind. So the reason I brought the question about have we had sightings, not sightings, but actual contact and the abduction is because from my mindset, what in the pick a color, the navy blue fuck would an alternative life form want to take a human being for? Like what would be the purpose of
the same reason we would want to take an alien life form to study, to understand, to investigate.
Sure, but the difference is, now if we had the ability to go out there and go get them, we probably would, because that's how the fuck we are. But the difference is, we're not going to fucking planet 2269 Tunney and going to go get people if we really did take any.
Because we can't. You
Well,
see what
sure.
I'm saying?
Well,
I think the difference is if we're saying that they've been here and in contact, they have the ability to do things that we cannot, or at least the general public has not been exposed to,
Well, and then there's,
sure.
if you want to go down the dark rabbit hole on this,
they're already here. They're in the mountains.
Well,
they're in the oceans. They're in all the places we can't find, right? Or
sure,
go
but
to
there's
explore more.
there's even a more nefarious purpose that could be going on here, and that's the hybridization of races and that sort of thing. Are they here to create a hybrid sort of alien human hybrid? If you watch a Disclosure Day trailer, there's hybrids there. The guy who says, I can understand what they're saying. Could there be similarities between our genetics that enable that sort of crossbreeding to create a new master race or something? That could be part of what's going on. In addition to resource part. Yeah. I mean, there's the other opinion is that they don't give like you said, Ray, they don't give a flying blue fuck about us, but it's the planet's natural resources that they care about. Gold, silver, titanium, palladium, stuff like that.
Well, here's the thing. But here's the thing, though. Like, there's no other planet that supports life like we do in anywhere close to where we are from our minds, from our mind's perspective.
Carbon-based
At
life
least in
form,
in our solar system, yes, that's for sure.
Carbon-based life forms, you're absolutely right.
Unless they're on Mars and underground or something, who the hell knows?
We've learned that, with the exception of maybe Mercury, all of the other planets have had water. It's just not liquid form water anymore.
Right.
So what's the movie, the alien movie that was the prequel with Fassbender, where they went to the other planet to find the people who actually who actually were like our forefathers and came and
Was
did
that
this?
Contact?
No, look,
Or
Tony's looking it up.
Not Interstellar.
No, but it's literally the prequel to Alien. Like that's what sets
Alien
the
Prometheus.
Alien Covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Covenant.
Prometheus is what I'm talking about. Covenant's another one. Covenant's the prequel to Alien Earth. But
Yeah.
so this is a bit tangential, but the one I don't want to delineate and call this a conspiracy theory because that would seem a bit dismissive. I don't mean to do that. But the one of those things that I firmly believe in is the truth about Antarctica.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Antarctica because I was going to announce at the end of this episode, but I'll do it now since you just
My
mentioned
bad.
it.
Well, see, hashtag journalism.
No.
And you can go to
Yeah, that's right.
prowrestlingtees.com/chairshot and go get a hashtag journalism t-shirt from your boy Rey Cash.
Yeah. Between this episode and the Roswell episode, which are like the two sides of the summer of 1947 coin, my wife, you guys know Kayleen, right?
Yes.
So like the last few weeks, she's been coming to me in the mornings because I'm always listening to the UFO podcast, and she starts to, get into that and listen to see what like Pavel Ibarra from Psychoactiva, who we have an enormous amount of respect for, and he's a content machine. And she's like been asking me about the ice wall in Antarctica for like the last 3 weeks. And I'm like, babe, I don't know much about the ice wall in Antarctica other than that it's a very flat earth adjacent sort of theory.
Yeah. And that's not where I'm on, by the way, for sure.
But she keeps asking me about that. I said, all right, fine. On the next episode of Unidentified History, we will do a deep dive into the ice wall in Antarctica and everything about that just for you. So what were you mentioning about Antarctica, Ray?
Well, first and foremost, hey, Mrs. Ungar. You said her name so I can say it. Hey, Kayleen.
Mrs. Attitude.
Mrs. Attitude.
Well, see, she still got smoke with me about that, so my bad. So I am not, and I don't mean to again, I try to be dismissive. No matter how ridiculous something it may be in my mind. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not an ice wall guy. My thoughts on the Antarctica thing is we know about plate tectonics if we think scientifically, right? And we understand that if we believe in the scientific theory that all of the actual land masses on Earth were at one point one, and through plate tectonics they all became where we are now. And there is scientific proof to show that that is feasible, right? The one thing that gets me is before Antarctica ended up where it is, right? Before it ended up where it is, that we know of, because I believe Antarctica was officially found in like the 1800s or something like that, right?
Yeah, somewhere.
It hasn't been that long. It may be a 17s or 16s, but it hasn't been that long. There are maps back in the days where all they had was cartography that show Antarctica there. And the fact that there are so many different cultures and worlds and areas in the world.
January of 1820
is the official.
Antarctica was first sighted by
Yes.
3 separate expeditions of Russian naval officers.
Exactly.
Fabian Gottlieb von Belzinghausen, the first Hausen.
And
easy for you to say.
The first confirmed landing occurred in 1821 by sealer John Davis. That one's a little bit.
And they great grandkids. Thank you for saying their name on air.
Is that Danhausen's great?
I don't
Fabian
know. I bet
Gottlieb von Bellinghausen.
He's cursed, whoever he is. But
so there's the fact that we have verifiable maps with Antarctica where it is years before that. On top of that, there's every different culture around the globe that was built in the time after the land masses have kind of settled. I'm not talking Jurassic, Mesozoic, any of that. Like in the modern times. So everything since, I'm not even going to go BCE. Everything since like 10,000, right? AD. Everything in that time frame that since the land masses have, all have extremely similar markings, pyramids, everything exactly the same. And they could not have talked to each other in any form or fashion. They could not have communicated in any form or fashion, and it would have been a death knell for them to try to go see each other in any form or fashion. The one connective tissue, Antarctica can get to all of them within a decent amount of time. So there is something about that landmass, or lack of a landmass if you believe what it's supposed to look like underneath the ice, because it's an archipelago underneath the ice, if you believe what the maps show. There's something there that is a a past life that may connect a lot of the stories of the world. We don't know. I don't know if it is alien in nature. I don't know if it is technological in nature. I don't know if whatever it is. It could be both.
Could be both.
But it's
Probably
something
both.
there. Because the same people can't be seeing the same things, and hieroglyphics are not the same as Aztec markings, are not the same as the Indus Valley, is not the same as they don't match. They don't talk to each other. So for them to all say and show the exact same things, some at the same period, same carbon dating, same time frame, something had to be happening. And the only middle ground is the place that had never been found until 1820. So there's something there. There's also a reason why that's the only place on this government that'll never be fought over. Everybody said, nah, bruh, we all got to sit down and work, and we all agree with each other.
That's one of the things Kayleen says, is that every government in the world protects the ice wall in Antarctica. Why? We can't get along with each other on any other thing, but this continent, this forgotten ice continent, why are we all protecting this?
It's community property, dog. Think about that. It is a communist property. It's community property.
It is very interesting whatever's going on there. Go ahead, Tunney. You had your microphone down.
No, I don't know. It's weird for me. I kind of, you hear all this science and stuff, but Ray brought up being religious, and I brought up very religious and have my own beliefs. And I tend to believe more so that I don't necessarily know there ever was a Pangea.
Okay.
It's interesting though. I tend to believe a lot of the biblical events. So the Tower of Babel, I believe, was the tongues where God was like, you people need to go out, spread out, and he made everybody speak different languages, right?
Yeah.
If you believe that. Noah's Ark, the great flood of the world, right? Likely the extinction of the dinosaurs happening there. How are you going to get a dinosaur on a boat? But just to reference the biblical times thing, whether you believe it or not, but science will show you all these different things like Ray is saying. I think what I really was commenting on is I think it's more of a global warming kind of save the earth kind of melting poles. Like the poles start shifting, we all die. So we do need to protect Antarctica. We do need to make sure that the polar caps aren't continuing to melt at an extraordinary rate. Like things are changing. I get there are shifts in the world's atmosphere and weather and everything else. Like even just locally, someone who always pays attention to the weather, I feel like it's way more windy now than it was the first 35 years of my life. And but that's going to happen. We don't have the technological history to predict these things because we don't really even know back from we're going to get into 1947. The fuck did they really know about anything in 1947 compared to we know now about weather and the world's atmosphere and stuff? So it's interesting, but at the same time, you can definitely sit there and go, well, maybe there is something there.
So one last thing, Dave. I don't mean to take over the conversation. And by the way, that the thing about the Noah's Ark and all the other shit, boy, there's a show I'm working on with a good friend of mine who actually is now a pastor called Find Your Faith, which is supposed to be like a religious show for a non-religious person. I don't really fuck with religious people like that, to be honest with you, as religious as I am. But we talk about shit like that because there's a lot of stuff that's really, really cool to think about. To the Antarctica part you said about the poles and all that, if that was really strictly about scientifically trying to make sure things are good, why nobody give a fuck about the North Pole?
Well, the problem with the North Pole is there's no giant landmass unless you're going to count Greenland.
But there are glaciers all around it.
There are. It's a little bit. I mean, it's a good point though. I mean, you want to make sure because if you have a pole reversal, we're all kind of fucked in that sort of situations. Yeah, so long.
It's been fun knowing y'all.
But to bring it all back to the disappearance of these people and I mean, what secrets do they hold? What do they really know? Do they have information that would be critical for an adversary, or were they wiped out? I don't know. Interesting stuff. But one thing I wanted to mention, like Ray, you're talking about the congruency of various civilizations and the similarities between various civilizations on opposite sides of the earth that couldn't possibly have talked to each other. There's talk this week that they may have found a second Sphinx in Egypt. And I know, Tony, we've talked about the pyramids on this show before and how were those made and what's under the pyramids. And now there's been, I guess the government of Egypt is going to give enhanced and expanded ability to like dig down there and look for subterranean antechambers and things like that. But now there's talk about they might have found a second Sphinx. I was like, wait a second, what the hell is that all about?
Isn't there supposed to be sphinxes somewhere in the Inca Valley or the Aztec area near Mexico City DF or whatever? Like, yeah, man, this stuff is weird, bro.
It is very strange. It is very strange. Last news story I want to touch bases on, and then we'll get into Kenneth Arnold, is whistleblower Matthew Brown came out about a week ago on an episode of Weaponized. And Matt, his first interview was excellent, and Matt came back, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Matt. And he was talking about how he had been, he was trying to get up a meeting with ODNI, Office of Defense National Intelligence, I believe is what the initials are. And this didn't go so well, and they a lot of people acted like they were in support of him and wanted to help him out. And it ends up, it's kind of like, this is all bullshit and it's a trap. So I've got a brief video from Weaponized I want to show you, and Matt explaining kind of what went down there. Let's take a look at that real quick and go and see, Matt got hosed again on this whole situation. So here you go.
So I go there. We are taken to the basement. This is in the middle of the government shutdown, so it's kind of a ghost town. And I'm expecting to go to like the formal conference rooms in the basement, but we end up going to essentially a conference room converted into storage / working office space. Very X-Files, molder in the basement with boxes.
Was that set up for you, do you think, or do you think?
They even referenced the fact that they were like the X-Files office in the basement of the building. So again, the whole reason of me being there, at least for me, is to find out about a UAP whistleblower protection program, and find out what that is and get myself into it.
So they're going to protect you because they recognize you as a UAP whistleblower.
Correct.
And that's why you're going in.
And this program had been offered to friends who had gone in before. They received a document, reviewed it and signed it. And I'm basically expecting, that's how our meeting starts, to hear about this program, get into it, relay the basics of my story. They already saw the interview, so what more do you need? And then figure out, what can I do to help? I'm also bringing in additional information that was not from government sources and providing that to them as a gesture of goodwill and trust. So, that's the experience I'm expecting to have. And the experience I got was a very wide-ranging, free-flowing conversation. Definitely some specific questions built in there.
But in a skiff.
But in a skiff, yes. We were in a skiff, absolutely. And
are you legally allowed to say what happened in that skiff?
Unclear. I think I'm okay to talk about what I talked about, but not the details of why I said what I said.
Did you sign anything?
No, so that's the most concerning thing for me. The whole reason of having that meeting never came about. The UAP whistleblower program by ODNI was never offered to me. I was never briefed on it. The only thing I was informed of was that, do I want to become an ICIG UAP whistleblower? Very different thing. And I'm like, no, I see no advantage in that. Based on my friends' experience who have done the same thing, it is a trap. I want
Dylan.
Correct.
So you've got this whole nonsense with they are actively trying to entrap these whistleblowers. Matthew Brown is one of them. Dylan Borland is another one. David Grush has had his medical records leaked. We all know that sort of thing. So this is the kind of like, and I know, Ray, you haven't been as involved with the whistleblower stuff as like I have, and Tunney to a lesser extent, because we've covered that in the past. But this whole idea of just trying to entrap these guys and to sucker them in to doing stuff where, like, and earlier in that clip, I didn't film that part of the clip, but Jeremy Corbell had asked Matt, did you take your phone into this SCIF? SCIF is a secured environment. That's where you can go in and exchange secured information with people who have the right clearance, and it's extremely secured environment. So Jeremy had asked Matt, did you bring your phone in there? And Matt's like, no, because everybody else who I've talked to who brings their phone in there comes out and realizes their phone's been tampered with. It's been cloned. It's been duplicated. It's been hacked while they're in there. And of course, ODNI says, wasn't me. That sort of thing, which is like bullshit. Who else could it be? And, just the notion that Matt...
Could have been at CC Melissa.
Yeah, my good buddy, CC Melissa. Yeah, exactly. We're not going to get into that, though. But it's these guys are being brought in and told, hey, you want to be part of this whistleblower protection thing. And then they flip it on them. And the ICIG whistleblower that stands for Intelligence Community Inspector General. So that's a completely different type of whistleblower. And Dylan Borland got suckered into the same sort of thing. And that's what they're talking about at the end. He was told by attorneys and all these other people, talk to the Inspector General, the ICIG. And that backfired badly on Dylan, because the second he started talking about this stuff, they just immediately classified all of it, including aspects of his childhood. So it's all a big trap and it's all a big game. And it was extremely disappointing to hear what had happened to Matt, because I think I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Matt, and I've talked with Matt on X back in the day and that sort of thing. But I just I watch this, I'm like, what a load of bullshit, man. These guys just, not only are they try to do the right thing, they try to follow all the rules, and all they do is they get fucked over and shit on all the times. Tiny, I know you've covered a little bit of this stuff with me in the past on the whistleblowers. It's got to piss you off a little bit what's happening to these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about before. If the government views you as an enemy, they're going to use all their resources, wits, and intelligence to get what they want. They're more powerful than you. They just are. And for me, mainly because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're capable of. When you have an unknown with something you're dealing with, you're kind of fucked. Like, they have all the information. So yeah, it sucks. And that's kind of the problem we run into with doing these types of things. The bigger you get, the harder it is to continue to maintain, like a form of integrity without being tampered with by the powers that be.
Yeah, I mean, that ties right into the previous story we covered. We don't know the extent that the government is going to silence people to get what they want. How far are they willing to go to protect this secret? That sort of thing, or whatever the secret is. Are they willing to kill for it? I would say probably, but are they willing to manipulate things and really psyop and dox the shit out of people and gaslight the fuck out of everybody? Absolutely. Go ahead, Tony.
The only last caveat I add to that is that there's also a chance that the government is doing this for our own good, whether we like it or not, or are able to understand it or not. I don't know that's necessarily the way I lean towards it, but it's also a possibility.
40 chess.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the extent like Ray, and I know Tony to a lesser extent, but you guys are talking about your faith and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of people who are very faith-based who would not be able to handle the revelation that, hey, guess what? We are not the greatest thing in the cosmos or in the solar system. We're very low on the food chain in actuality. Sure. There's human ego, yes, but there's also the idea that the Bible somehow, some way precludes any life existing elsewhere other than on the earth, which I've read the Bible enough times to say, no, it never says that. You're reading something in there that's not there.
Yeah. So like between Ray and I've never heard that the Bible specifically tells you that they're outside of the human race and the mammals and the insects and whatever else you want to call on this earth, that there isn't. I don't know where, and let me just tell you, I went to parochial grade school and had 9 years of basically Bible study for an hour, 5 days a week during school. Right?
Same.
I agree with you guys. I've never seen it, and I don't study the Bible like you guys do, but it's not there. But you have heard for decades people slanting this to indicate that the proof of life elsewhere would eviscerate the existence of God, which is nonsensical to me.
No, and here's the problem too, right? Like, religion is not without its own corruptness.
For sure.
And
it's inherently corrupt.
And trying to protect itself on top of it, right?
It's inherently corrupt.
This is the case. There go all my members of my congregation. There goes all the money. There goes my life. At some point, personal perseverance personal preservation comes into play with some of these things as well and takes over where you didn't think you'd be that person.
Can I give you a little context into this particular situation? And for the record, I'm a pastor's son, so I have had these conversations at parochial school, but also at home in a different way. Me and my mother.
I didn't know Rob was a pastor. Did you know Rob was a pastor? I did not know Rob was a pastor. Sorry, Ray. Go ahead.
Wasn't expecting that. That was good. That was good.
Well done.
Thank you.
So, and pardon me for just for a minute, because this might be just a small amount of length. But people who are truly Biblists believe that everything God told you is in the Bible, and God wants you to know is in the Bible. And I can give you a perfect example of this thing, because me and my mom in recent years has gotten a lot more open-minded with things because of me. But there is the story of Cain and Abel, right? Where everybody knows, if you don't even believe in God, everybody knows the initial story of Garden Eden, Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Cain kills his brother Abel because Cain is essentially the farmer. Abel is like tilling the ground farmer, and Abel raising the animals. They make a sacrifice to God. God seemed to like Abel's sacrifice more than Cain's. Cain get a little jealous, kill Abel in a fit of rage. After he kills Abel, God came to him like, "Hey, where your boy at?" And Cain was like, "I don't know." And God was like, "Dog,
He
what we
said,
doing?"
I am not my brother's keeper.
Exactly. That's where that comes from, by the way.
So he was in New Jack City then. Is that what you're saying?
Pookie is next, right?
But yeah, Pookie's next.
But the whole point the whole point of where I'm coming from in this situation is in the text. I'm just speaking of the text of the Bible. The very next thing is God banishes Cain to walk the earth. Right? And Cain says to God, "But what if somebody comes and tries to hurt me?" Who the fuck is the somebody? That's not written in there. On top of that, Cain settled.
But Abel had already had children.
No,
there was other people in the world.
No, there weren't.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure.
No, there weren't. I'll give you every ounce of money in my bank account right now. I have had this conversation to a level that is obsessively bad. There was nobody. We're talking Genesis 4. There was nobody else on earth. I promise you. Not according to the Bible. There's not. I have had this conversation to a level that is scholars would be like that's how deep into this part I am, because it is the antithesis of what religion is about. If a lot of my problem with religion in general is if I'm supposed to be if everything about my faith is based on this book, then this shit needs to make sense. And the very beginning of the Bible doesn't make sense in this story, because God then Cain settles in the land of Nod or wherever, never was taught about that shit before, settles with his wife and makes kids. Who was the wife? And so these are the things why people who are super religious don't believe in aliens, because according to them, all what it tells in the Bible. It says the heavens and the earth. Right. It doesn't say the cosmos. It doesn't say all of the different planets. It doesn't say any of that. And so
doesn't talk about dinosaurs either. We know they exist.
Well, yeah, but to be fair, the Bible is way before dinosaurs, so they wouldn't have known about them, right? According to the book.
Well, no. I mean, 5 million years versus the Bible. The dinosaurs came way before
the Bible don't
did.
work on the same timeline as what we know Earth to be. It's not, it's not the same amount of
8
time.
days, we know that the Earth was not made in 8 days. 24-hour days.
There's also some contradictions in that very beginning, because the whole 6 days, I'm sorry, because he chilled on the 7th. He built the oceans and the water. But then 3 verses later, then he was like, we need some rivers, we need some water. You built that in the first 6 days. Now you building it? There's some contradictions in this. But also, these are stories that were written by man, right? God wasn't writing this down when he was doing all this.
Well, okay.
Man wrote this stuff down.
Hold on. Not written by man, interpreted by man. Man interpreted whatever they thought God was telling them. And, that's why you've got different variations of so many different things, is because that's the problem I've always had with this. I feel that this is the word of God. No, it's the word of God interpreted by man and written down. And if you've ever played a game of telephone,
that's why I say written.
Purple monkey dishwasher.
That's why I say written, Dave, because if it was interpreted, it would happen in the real time. We're talking tens of thousands of years later before there was ever any type of form for mass printing for this then to be. So it was written. Like the story of David. Do you know how long it was between the story of David to when they could actually write shit down? So didn't mean to take this from UAP to religion, but
No,
there are
I
so
get
many
it.
parallels in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what we've talked about many times, is that that this stuff is all very connected. And I'm adamantly of the belief that some of the stories in the Bible, I think, are people misinterpreting what they think. Oh, that's an angel. Well, it could have been a UFO, could have been an alien being, could have been something like that.
For sure.
You know,
it's possible.
It's everything's subject to interpretation.
For sure.
And that sort of thing.
For
So,
sure.
but, with that being said, it's a crappy situation where, you go in with the best of intentions and people just shit on you. And it's all entrapment. It's all psyop. It's all gaslighting. It's all manipulation. Like Tunney was saying, it's all the government flexing because they can. And there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
That's the oldest story in the history of society, isn't it, though, where someone knows too much and whoever's the governing bodies, take it back to biblicals, Jesus was killed because he knew too much. They were scared of him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and even then, like, there's, and I've had Samuel Chong on this show, and we've talked about, was Jesus one of them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Was he?
It's a fair conversation to have.
And they said, and the aliens came here and they said, all right, we're going to put one of ours on the earth. Let's see how people react. Shit, they nailed him to a fucking cross. They're not ready. That sort of thing. And there's a lot of validity if you really dig down and think about it. It's like, yeah, we demonstrated how barbaric we were in that we are not ready for a higher level of consciousness, just that we're ready for a higher level of war. DJ, that was for you, buddy, because
and just even a peaceful world.
DJ's quoted Thor to us many times. So
yeah, we don't even want peace, bro. It's wild.
Yeah, nobody wants it's peace is just a fleeting concept. Everybody wants death, destruction, fire, and war. Let's get into what we were here for today. Let's talk about the Kenneth Arnold sighting. This summer of 1947, part one of the two biggest events in arguably the history. I won't say the history of ufology, because there are some other really big events that will happen along the way. But as far as we're talking about Genesis and origins and things like that, this is where it really all starts in the summer of 1947. And Ray, I just emailed you the document so you could have you got it, my man.
I did that an hour ago.
Yeah.
You're a nice guy, Tony.
Yeah.
I just thought Ray was going to big time me and not even show up for this thing. So,
I was technically, I wasn't invited. You have
a standing invite. I just thought I'm not going to send it to Ray because he's not going to care.
Let's hear. Hold on. Let me see something. You're in the unidentified history DM.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
everybody who would like to join us.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So there was a blanket invitation, but my phone wasn't called.
Oh, well, listen, Dave, Ray has become somewhat a man of importance now. So he's gonna need like hand-carved invitations sent to him via Sparrow. Okay.
I love the fact that you're on vacation from Bandwagon Nerds, but you show up for Unidentified History, Ray. That's why I love you so much, brother.
I gotta justify the massive spending account that Cheshire gave me.
Your expense account. Got to justify Omni-Man being the greatest, the best of the rest.
Boy, if you want some smoke, whew.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Kenneth Arnold sighting and just how important this was. And there's three events we're actually going to talk about. They're all related to each other. And so this is the Kenneth Arnold sighting, but it's bigger than that. It's deeper than that. And so where this whole thing starts is the modern UFO era. It did not start with Roswell. Roswell's in part two of the summer of 1947. That'll be in a couple of episodes. So there's a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold. And all of this stuff gets going, and everything we've talked about, Tunney, on Unidentified History up to now. Gosta Carlson, Ghost Rockets, Battle of Los Angeles, Trinity, all that stuff has been leading to this moment, this is by far and away the biggest thing that we've talked about so far. June 24th, 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold is flying a Cal Air A-2 near Mount Rainier, Washington, or I guess it could be Mount Rainier, Oregon, depending on what side of the mountain range you're on, after briefly joining the search for a missing Marine Corps C-46. About 3 p.m., at about 9,200 feet, he notices a bright flash, then a string of 9 highly reflective objects north of Mount Rainier. Kenneth Arnold said that they flew in a line, weaved somewhat, and flashed intensely when they banked. He later described their motion as being, quote, like a saucer if you skip it across water, end quote, and this helped launch the phrase flying saucer. Now, it's interesting that Arnold, this whole thing of attributing to him the statement of flying saucer is interesting because he never originally said that they were flying saucers. He says they were like simple dinner plate discs. And in his early accounts, he described them as thin, flat, somewhat crescent, or pie pan-like, rounded in front and clipped or pointed in the back. The famous saucer language referred at least partly to their motion, not just their shape. So if you actually look at the diagram that Kenneth Arnold drew of these things, they look more like a fucking batarang than a flying saucer. It's like, did Batman, was he flying around up there in the early days and that sort of thing?
It was Adam West.
It was Adam West the whole time, yeah. Kenneth Arnold said the objects traveled from Mount Rainier toward Mount Adams, which is roughly 50 miles in 1 minute and 42 seconds, which led him to estimate the speed of the objects at least 1,200 miles per hour, far beyond the performance of any known aircraft of the day. He was not initially claiming that they were aliens. His first instinct was that this has to be an advanced U.S. military craft that I'm seeing. I don't know what else it could be, that sort of thing. So along those lines, let's take a look at another video clip that I have here. And this is a clip I got from the Think Anomalous. This will give you some background information. So let's take a look at this. This is from Think Anomalous, and this gives you some of the information that we just touched on, but in more video formats. Let's go.
On June 24, 1947, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold spotted a group of lustrous delta-shaped objects flying around the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. Arnold's story made headlines across the country, inspiring a worldwide fascination with flying saucers, and over 20 years of U.S. government research. Arnold's wasn't the first anomalous aerial sighting in human history, or even the first in 1947, but it captured the public imagination like few sightings before, and it birthed a new mythology of extraterrestrial visitation. Around 2:15 p.m. on June 24, 1947, businessman and private pilot Kenneth Arnold left Chehalis, Washington in his Call Air Model A plane on a business flight to Yakima. Just before 3 p.m., Arnold spotted what looked like a chain or a Chinese kite weaving across the face of Mount Rainier. As it got closer, he could distinguish 9 separate objects in reverse echelon formation, around 2,900 meters altitude. The objects were rounded and delta-shaped, with concave triangular protrusions on their rears. They appeared to repeatedly dip in the sky and tilt their wings in Arnold's direction, reflecting intensely bright flashes of light through his windshield. The objects were moving so fast that Arnold decided they must have been fighter jets flying in formation. However, they flew with the leading craft at the highest altitude, not the lowest, and Arnold could not see any tails. He clocked the time it took the formation to travel between the peaks of Mount Rainier and Mount Adams, which he knew to be 30 to 40 kilometers away. Immediately after landing in Yakima, Arnold told a number of friends and fellow pilots about his sighting. He also used his measurements to calculate that the objects were between 13 to 15 meters long, and that they were traveling nearly 2,000 kilometers per hour at the time of the sighting. Arnold took his story to the East Oregonian newspaper, reporting that the objects seemed to bounce through the air like a saucer skipping across water. Within 2 days, newspapers were running front-page stories on Arnold's flying saucers, although Arnold himself had not called them that. The term stuck, however, until being replaced by the Air Force term UFO in the early 1950s. The media buzz encouraged others to go public with their own anomalous sightings, most of which involved disc-shaped craft. In the following weeks, flying saucers were showing up around the world, and witnesses' stories were making...
Okay, so you get some of the information there that is some of what we already talked about, and that's just more background information. But you did see in that video his rendition, his drawing of what these things look like. And like I said, very Batarang-like, right, Ray? You're a Batman fan. They look like fucking Batarangs, didn't they?
Not just Batarangs, but it's interesting. They're in a V formation like birds.
Yes.
Very interesting to me.
And that ties into, like, Patrick Jackson is the author of the Sphere Network, and he talks about how a lot of this, there's a belief that there's a network of spheres that are protecting the planet from who the hell knows what. And a lot of times they're in a V formation. And you look at our military, which also adopts V formation for certain tactics and maneuvers and that sort of thing. So there's this universality about V formations and that sort. It's weird, isn't it?
Got to be something about aerodynamics or some. It's got to be something because because birds are weird in general too. Their flying system and their communication system, and so and everything we know about flying essentially came from watching birds, right? The Wrights modeled the first airplane after the way birds moved. So yeah, that's very interesting. That our first sighting of something that is otherworldly would be flying in the same formation we know. That's interesting to me.
It is very interesting, and it does make you wonder if there, like I said, is there some universality to this sort of
or were they watching
V-formation
us and saw that that's how we do things?
Yeah, or were we watching them? Did we learn it from
Well,
them at some point in time?
yeah.
You know, I mean, that sort of thing. What do you think? You got a little bit of a smirk on your face there. I could see the wheels turning. I see, and it's not just because there's wind chimes somewhere. I can
No,
see things going on there.
it'd be a pissed off face.
It'd be a smirk. What do you think of this stuff? The early stuff about this sighting. We're going to get a little bit deeper into it, but your thoughts on this early on here?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the episode, like the basically 15-minute version of what we just watched, and that was kind of one of the things when he was going through telling his story and talking about him trying to decipher what he was really looking at. That was one of the first things he thought was it could have been geese or something, because he wasn't sure. And we'll get into that more clearly, the steps he took to like firmly identify what he thought was out there. But yeah, I don't know that, I mean, there's a lot of things that are universal to our world. They could also be universal to our universe as well, right? So
yeah. So I keep talking about this universality of it. I mean, is it just like, is that something inherent as far as like flight in general?
Are birds there?
Could be.
Man,
that's a good point.
Have you ever looked at a migration map of the way birds move over a yearly? It's very weird. So Tunney, you might be onto something.
And I mean, if you follow the
I don't believe that, but
I don't either. But it's enough for me to think about it.
Logical estimations, hypotheses, etc.
Sure. If you look at the migratory, once you start digging into the migratory patterns of birds,
well, the problem too is you go ahead and add into the migratory patterns of ocean inhabitants, and now you're looking at similar things.
They are following things that we can't sense. That much is for sure. Anything in the ocean is following some sort of migratory pattern and sensing something about the
coming
Earth.
from
and they're all too stupid to be able to create a nice, warm house and soft bed to sleep on daily, too, right? So, it's a give and take kind of thing.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Turning back to the sighting, why does this sighting matter so much? This is the first post-war U.S. UFO sighting to explode nationally. I mean, we've talked about stuff about the Battle of Los Angeles and some stuff like that, and Trinity, and whether you believe Trinity happened or not. But this triggers everything. 1947 explodes. The first 6 months of 1947 are kind of quiet. Then from June through the end of 1947, it is freaking crazy. The flying disc craze launches from here. And this is going to go from June 24th all the way up to Roswell, which is a couple weeks later.
Technically, June 20th.
Well, that's true. We're going to get into that in a minute. Yeah, we're going to talk about an event that chronologically happens before, but we're going to talk about it afterwards because it just makes more sense to do it that way. But there's a lot of reasons why Kenneth Arnold's report has endured. Arnold was considered a credible witness. He was an experienced pilot. He was a businessman. He gave a detailed, immediate account. He didn't initially frame the incident as anything like this. He didn't say it was extraterrestrial. He got Army Air Forces investigators, Lieutenant Frank Brown, Captain William Davidson. They investigated it. They said that they thought that Kenneth Arnold had actually seen what he claimed to have seen. There was some limited corroboration, and on or near the same day and time, other observers, and we're going to watch a little video clip of that in a minute. So I'll just skip around about that because we'll go and watch the video that's a little bit better. Military response to this was mixed. They didn't just flat out dismiss this. An Army Air Force intelligence officer called the report a silly season episode, but another different interview team judged Kenneth Arnold as being sincere. And later, Air Force personnel such as Edward Ruppelt treated the case as one of the core early sightings worth serious discussion. Now, there is, of course, the skeptical aspect of this, and you've got to talk about that. So the biggest skeptical point of view is that Kenneth Arnold's dramatic speed estimates were based off of this one key assumption that may or may not be true. That's where Kenneth Arnold thought that the objects were near the mountain range. And if they were actually closer to him than he thought, then the speed estimate collapses. And now we're not looking at 1,200 miles per hour. We're looking at something much different. This is similar to like the parallax effect that we get with some of the UFO videos and that sort of thing. So some of the skeptical analysis and reasons, some are better than others. One of the ones was jets, even some experimental jet. Army officials thought Kenneth Arnold may have seen early jet aircraft such as P-80s. There's some practical problems with that explanation, including the location and performance of those jets. Some people had said this was a mirage or atmospheric effects. Stuart Campbell is one of the biggest skeptics of this, argued that Kenneth Arnold may have seen mirages of snow-covered mountain peaks or optical effects caused by atmospheric conditions. Birds, we mentioned birds. Others suggested American white pelicans, whose wings can flash in sunlight and whose shape and profile can look odd at a distance. I'm not sure I've ever seen pelicans flying over mountains, but okay.
Wasn't the altitude of what was happening completely dissipate the fact that it's birds?
9,200 feet? Yeah. I don't know too many birds that are flying up around
I don't know any birds that fly 1,800 miles
That's
an hour
also
either.
interesting.
So, like the peregrine falcon, 270 some miles an hour at its death descent to kill animals before it swoops up, comes back around. All right, Tunney knows birds.
You're not outrunning a plane.
So it's also interesting that they knew the bird to go to immediately. It's a fucking American. Word? It's like 2,000 types of birds. That's the one you immediately. Well, I knew that because if you follow the birds, if you follow the thing.
There was only like a baker's dozen number of birds back in 1947. They hadn't
Word.
established them all yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago, Ray.
Exactly.
So Darwin was wrong the whole time.
Way before Al Gore invented the internet, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you for helping me understand the timeline.
One of the other explanations was meteors. Philip Klass floated a meteor-related explanation. That has struck many researchers as a poor fit because Kenneth Arnold described a sustained, organized formation rather than a brief fireball event. Yeah, man, if you got meteors that are flying in formation and staying sustained for that long, you got another problem entirely.
Meteors also don't fly horizontally.
No, they typically do not, and they're very fleeting and that sort of thing. So I think the biggest
Wasn't there one more thing? There was one more thing
Jets,
that his story made sure that in his actual telling, it kind of debunks what they said. Water droplets on his windows could have performed the same thing, but he made sure to maneuver the plane and open his window, take off his glasses, and look with his own eyes and saw the same thing.
Why did he just take a picture of his smartphone?
1947, Ray. Ray's he's going extratemporal here and trying to get in the whole idea
if this was
of time traveling.
If this was the Fantastic Four world, they had the phones back then.
This was not Tony Khan, that time traveling bastard. He wasn't sitting next to Kenneth Arnold with a mountain of cocaine saying, "Take a picture of this stuff, Ken." Now that would have been
it was a mirage. If there was a mountain of cocaine on that plane, they just saw it, man. No big deal.
Yes. The biggest thing I'll give the skeptics about this, the only point I'll give them is that he could have been off on the distance and the speed. He could have been guesstimating how close these things were to the mountains and they could have been closer to him. But on the other hand, some of these other explanations are just dumb and forced. That's yours. We've already talked about that. Ken's mirages. I know didn't one guy say that they thought it was like snowdrifts coming off the mountains, right?
And they don't reflect. Yeah, when you watch that, if anybody hasn't watched, you got to put the link to that 15-minute video. It really does everything well there. But like they bunk all. The funny thing though is when he got to where he was going, he told them he thought it was like a new plane that the military was testing, right?
Yeah,
that's what helped him, by the way. Because people thought he was crazy. We're like, oh no, man, something from the moon was here. Yeah, they'd have been like.
Well, you got to also understand that this is a point in time when there's very little about flying saucers really, or UFOs circulating around. So it's not like it is now, which is part of the American or worldwide, just like it's accepted, that sort of thing. Go ahead,
and like he was on a business, like he was fire protection salesperson for some major company in Boise, right? And he was on a business flight and had heard that there was a downed military plane and had time and resources fuel-wise to go look for it. And that's why he was there. He was trying to help the military collect the fee, which was like $5,000 back then. I think they appropriated to about almost 60 now. So like worth his time if he had it, right?
Yeah. And you also wonder, well, how did what down that military plane?
Exactly.
Is that where this whole thing really started? Was there some sort of interaction between these things flying around out there in a military plane, and that led to this whole thing? And no one even talks about that. In none of the videos I saw did they talk about any of that stuff. But in general, most of the explanations kind of fall by the wayside. And then, so you got this corroboration going on. And because of some of this stuff, okay, we're looking at this thinking, okay, this is a strong, unidentified sighting. Is it extraterrestrials? Maybe, maybe not. But it's something unidentified. And then 10 days later, we're going to get the second prong of this trifecta of events going on here in 1947, the well-known United Airlines Flight 105 incident. And with this sort of thing, this is a very important, so this is just 10 days after the Kenneth Arnold sighting. And it's one of the most important follow-up cases to the Kenneth Arnold sighting because it involves a professional airline crew rather than just some lone civilian pilot out there. So on the evening of July 4th, 1947, so we're just a few days away from Roswell and all this shit is going on. United Airlines Flight 105, a DC-3 departs Boise, Idaho. So there's something going on here in the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest at this point. The crew reports seeing multiple unusual objects over the Pacific Northwest. The key witnesses were Captain E.J. Smith, remember that name, First Officer Ralph Stevens, and Stewardess Marty Morrow. The sighting occurred only, like I said, 10 days after Kenneth Arnold's June 24th sighting, right in the middle of the first national saucer wave. The crew initially saw 4 or 5 objects, then they later saw 4 or more. So now we've got that familiar 5 to 9 object range that everybody's talking about this time frame. Smith is going to describe them as flying in a loose formation. So there you go, Ray. There's the loose formation again. The objects are hard to describe precisely. The crew said they could not be sure whether they were truly saucer-shaped or oval, but they look smooth on the bottom and rough or ridged on top, with one appearing larger than the others, the mothership, so to speak. What made this case especially interesting is that the crew said they observed these objects for 10 to 15 minutes, covering roughly 45 miles. They also attempted to check the sighting in real time. Smith and Stevens radioed ahead to Ontario, Oregon, and another United flight in the region, but neither could independently confirm the objects at that moment. The stewardess, however, did come forward and corroborate the sighting from inside the aircraft. Unfortunately, the passengers, they had no idea what the hell was going on. But Smith would later say that the objects were mostly ahead of the plane and off the bow, so they wouldn't have been visible from the normal passenger seating or viewpoint. So why does this matter in the whole grand scheme of the Kenneth Arnold timeline? It gives ufology a professional pilot corroboration case, very close in time and in the same general region of the United States as Kenneth Arnold. And it helps shift the story from, hey, this is just one guy who saw something strange, to like, shit, a whole airline crew saw something weird too. And of course, the skeptics came out and they said, these will sound very familiar, especially to Tunney. Ray, welcome to the party, because you're going to hear a lot more of this. The U.S. military ultimately said the crew probably saw an ordinary aircraft. There it is, Tunney, balloons.
As always,
or
kills
birds.
me, dog. Balloons.
Birds or an illusion. So before we talk about it, let's take a look. This comes from the video that Tunney's talking about, the Weird History, the 15-minute episode about the Kenneth Arnold sighting. And I got this off Stupid Beyond Belief's YouTube channel. So this is just a bit of it that I plucked out of here. And it's going to talk about the corroboration of the witnesses. And we're also going to get in a little bit about United Airlines Flight 105. So let's get in here and take a look at this.
Dave, go back 10 seconds and pause it.
10 seconds?
Yeah, so that the map is showing up that they just showed.
All right.
So this is important, I think, for people to understand. This is like the overview of what's going on. Mount Adams, Mount Rainier, Arnold's location, where he left in Chehalis, Washington, where he's going to Yakima, and then the Diamond Gap Forest outlook is on the bottom. So you guys can kind of get a better sense of the area in which we're talking about. I think that would really help people.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tunney. So you can kind of see, I mean, it's spread out, but it's also very concentrated as far as what's going on here. And you can get kind of, yeah, and you get an idea like, and I don't know if my cursor is going to show up here or not. It's showing up. So
yeah, you're good.
You got Mount Rainier up here. You got Mount Adams here. So he says that they go, a minute and 42 seconds between here and here?
Something like that.
Pretty fucking fast.
Yeah. So that's 50 miles. You do the math, it's 1,800 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going pretty quick. So let's get back into this thing here.
Arnold's story not only seemed credible when held under scrutiny, but was corroborated by 16 similar stories on the very same day, and hundreds more over the following weeks. 6 accounts are of particular interest. Fred Johnson was a prospector working on Mount Adams around the same time frame as Arnold's encounter. He recalls seeing 6 round, tapered ovals that were sharp to a point. He also recalls the objects disturbing his compass. Ironically, Johnson's report was listed as the first unexplained UFO report in Air Force files, while Arnold's was classified as a mirage. This is all despite the fact it appears they are referencing the same incident. The next witness report of high interest was from a Forest Service lookout out of Salmon, Washington. The lookout claims to have seen shiny silver objects that produced distant flashes. He also didn't see any flying wings on the object, but believed that they're a new type of plane being tested. All on the same day of June 24th, another 2 witnesses came forward from Idaho to provide some of the most credible support to Arnold's story. Acting Lieutenant Governor of Idaho, Donald S. Whitehead, and Acting Head Justice of the Peace, J.M. Lampert, both report to have seen a comet-like object hanging in the western sky, wavering through the slopes of Mount Rainier. The next account of Decided to Feature comes days later from Los Angeles, California, and shared shockingly similar details. The wife of a bus driver was quoted as saying that her husband spotted objects moving through the sky at incredible speeds in an L formation, before eventually flashing out of sight. Another account that supported Arnold's story was based out of Manitou Springs, Colorado, when 7 employees of the railroad company claimed to have seen saucers similar to those described in Washington State. Lastly, we'll briefly examine the account deemed the primary corroborative sighting, originating from a United Airlines crew. While on a flight en route to Seattle, Captain Emil J. Smith and First Officer Ralph Stevens recalled seeing 9 disc-shaped objects that they followed behind but were unable to keep pace. They also recalled the crafts flying in a loose formation, with a single object higher than the rest and off to the right. The descriptions of the shape, flight formation, and behavior align closely with the previous stories, and curiously enough, happened 10 days after the Arnold sighting. Their aviation experience would lend the story massive credibility. After everything was said and done, there was 853 flying disc sightings collected in 1947 across 140 North American newspapers. Writer Ted Blocher collected these stories and reasoned that roughly 250 of them presented a genuine mystery. This included reports by pilots, scientists, multiple eyewitnesses, and those including photo evidence.
So that corroborates, you get a lot of witnesses corroborating things. You get people who are viewing the event from the opposite side of the mountains. You've got this expanding into Los Angeles. So you've definitely got the first, flying saucer flap of history kind of going on here, culminating in the United Airlines Flight 105 aspect of things. Tunney, you were all over that video there a little bit, my friend. What were you seeing in there that stood out to you, man?
No, just like I love the way, I watched that. Like, if you guys are loving what we're talking about here and you want to kind of see the whole picture painted there, that 15-minute thing you sent me is excellent and really, really well done. It'll just give you a little bit more, but just to see the visual of where we're working with, right? Like, if you want to, you can go ahead and deep dive the area now because you know exactly what's going on. But you see in which this story unfolds with these people in chronological order, and it just becomes more and more believable as it moves on.
Good, Rick.
I am a big believer in credibility when multiple people say the same things that don't know each other, have no reason to know each other, and have no way to contact each other. If Dave is in Bakersfield, California, I'm in Houston, Texas, and PC Tunney is in Oshkosh, and we all saw the same shit, and none of us talked.
Why gotta be in Oshkosh?
Because fuck that place. Sorry, Tyrese Halliburton. Sorry, Dylan Postles, aka Hornswoggle. I like y'all.
Fuck Tyrese Halliburton.
Well, you should say that, yes, understandably. But if we all never talked to each other, never were friends, never had each other's phone number, we all said have the same sightings, that would breed credibility to me. So for all these people to say the same things, and particularly the biggest story with the plane, and literally following that thing for 10 minutes and being like, "Hey, come see this. Hey, come see it," and everybody was like, "Oh, that's weird." That to me means, all right, now there's no more smoke in there anymore. Like now we're starting to see embers of the fire.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of people of all levels of professionalism, a civilian pilot and a whole airline crew who are following behind this thing going, what the hell is that?
And these are people of esteem. So why would they put their reputations on the line in a time in this country where reputation was more important than money in some places?
Funny thing about it, Ray brings up a great point. If you were a pilot for a commercial airline in 1947, you were one of the highest respected people in your community and in circles, and that, like there were certain things that back then, if you did that, now it's just like, yeah, well, whatever.
Well, why? I mean, and to your guys' point, in 1947, why would you make up a story like that? What were you going to gain from this? I mean, it's
there
like
was
there's
no
nothing.
History of now
Right,
there were people that did. I don't know if you're going to get to it or not, but there were. Yeah, you are. Never mind.
But
I'm confusing the video with your synopsis.
They couldn't
We're going to get to it, right?
I'm trying not to jump the gun.
They couldn't have found them on Google though, so how would they have known?
Well, I mean, really, all you've got is like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, that radio show, and a few weird things like that. But
and the encyclopedias every year.
Yeah, which historically is overblown to the effect that the Orson Welles thing had. It was mainly local.
It is very overblown. But I mean, you're not sitting there thinking, this is a moneymaker to cause this kind of shit. But as Tunney said, let's get into kind of the other side of the coin and the potentially ugly side of ufology. And we're going to talk about the Maury Island incident, which is one of the most, I mean, Tunney, this one might be more controversial than Trinity. And Trinity was pretty damn controversial. And Maury Island might be even worse.
I agree.
And there's some things to talk about. Now, chronologically, as we talked about, Tunney mentioned June 21st, 1947, and here's where we make the tie-in. Because chronologically, the Maury Island incident occurs before the Kenneth Arnold sighting, but it makes more sense to do it this way because Kenneth Arnold is intricately involved, as is E.J. Smith from the United Airlines Flight. So it makes more sense to do it this way. So in a nutshell, the Maury Island incident. Harold Dahl and Fred Chrisman claimed that their incident happened on June 21st, 1947, 3 days before Arnold's Mount Rainier sighting. Dahl said he was on a patrol boat near Maury Island in Puget Sound when he saw 6 donut-shaped objects overhead. One of them supposedly began dropping debris, white metal and lava-like fragments, which allegedly injured Dahl's son and a crewman and killed Dahl's dog. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. Dahl also said that a dark-suited man later warned him not to talk. So this is regarded as possibly one of the first mentions of the notorious Men in Black in modern history, not the Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith Men in Black, but the real guys.
It'd be the precursor for the John Wick story too, with the dog dying.
That's I don't know if Harold Dahl went on a 5-movie rampage, but
any relation
there,
to Roald Dahl?
I don't know. I don't think so, but we'd have to look into that.
Here comes the Ray in Black. God. Well, technically, Ray is black.
Yeah.
Hey, there's Ray. He's black.
Wow, we're going there, are we?
Defender.
So after Arnold becomes famous with this sighting that he had, Raymond Palmer, the science fiction editor, who later played a huge role in early flying saucer culture, contacted him and said, hey, Ken, you need to investigate this Maury Island situation. Now, where this gets a little shady is that Palmer wires money to Arnold to go ahead and do it. So that's problem number one right there. And it's like, okay, you're paying him to do this. So Kenneth Arnold brings in Captain E.J. Smith from the United Airlines Flight 105, and they go and they assess the story. So Chrisman is going to show them some alleged fragments, and apparently Kenneth Arnold and E.J. Smith felt like the white metal that they had examined was mundane and it was unconvincing as evidence of anything extraordinary. So that detail is important. It actually adds some credit. While it detracts from the credibility of Maury Island, it adds credibility to Kenneth Arnold because it's showing that he's not some fool who's just accepting anything presented to him as being valid. He's like, no, I don't think that this is anything extraordinary. The case, though, is going to take a very tragic turn, and this is going to feed into generations of conspiracy theories. So Kenneth Arnold is going to contact military intelligence. Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William Davidson, they come to Tacoma, Washington. They interview the people involved. They allegedly collect the fragments of what was recovered, and then they take off. And then their B-25 bomber crashes near Kelso, Washington on August 1st, 1947, killing both Brown and Davidson and creating a tragic situation. So the crash, of course, is going to give the story enormous staying power. To the believers, this smells like a cover-up. These motherfuckers crashed this plane to prevent any of the fragments from ever reaching its ultimate location. To the skeptics, it's of course just a tragic accident that became fused to this kind of questionable tale of what's going on. Now, shortly after this, the FBI concludes Maury Island is a complete and total fabrication and a hoax. The Bureau found that Dahl and Chrisman had floated different versions of the story. They were trying to build publicity around it. Edward Ruppelt, who we mentioned earlier, famously called Maury Island the dirtiest hoax in UFO history. I think one of the guys, Dahl would recant what he'd said earlier in facing enormous pressure because of the crash and the death of 2 military personnel. Now, the prevailing opinion is, of course, that Maury Island was a hoax, but there's still many people who support it as a legitimate event, and we look at the following factors. A number of defenders point to later readings of the FBI files and argue that the standard summary that Dahl and Chrisman simply made the whole thing up, it's just too neat, it's too tidy. In particular, the Washington State Senate's 2017 resolution on the incident reported the claim that Harold Dahl publicly said the event was a hoax after the Brown-Davidson crash, but that the FBI later concluded that this public recantation itself was made, like I mentioned, to avoid ridicule and attention. So it doesn't prove the original story was true, but it does provide a reason why some of the falsity about it may have been overblown. The skeptics acknowledge that Kenneth Arnold, Captain Smith, Frank Brown, William Davidson, they all got involved. So there's a military interest in what's going on here. And if it was all complete and total bullshit, why would all of these people have been involved in this whole thing? So a lot of the believers say the level of intention that this got suggests the case was taken seriously, even if it later kind of evolved into a hoax verdict. We talked about no matter what you believe, they really think that this Maury Island incident is where the now famous Men in Black motif came from. And Dahl's claim that a dark-suited stranger warned him not to talk, even if the underlying incident is disputed. The case clearly helps shape later UFO mythology. Some defenders argue that this makes it more than just a throwaway hoax. It may reflect some real event that then got distorted, dramatized, and buried inside folklore. And lastly, we've got writer and filmmaker Steve Edmiston, one of the main modern defenders of Maury Island as a worthy historical mystery, has argued that the FBI documents fly in the face of the popular belief that the entire story was just a crude concoction by Dahl and Chrisman. His view is not that Maury Island is a proven alien contact, but that the case was likely more tangled, involving competing narratives, official confusion, and myth-making layered on top of an uncertain original event. So, is it a hoax or is it not? Quite possibly. And before we start getting into the whole legit or bullshit aspect of at least this aspect of things, let's take a look. We got a short video kind of summarizing the Maury Island event here that we can take a look at and kind of get into this a little bit. And then we will discuss this in more detail.
The story begins on June 21st, 1947, when Harold Dahl, a local harbor patrolman, set sail with his son on a routine trip to collect logs off the coast of Maury Island. Little did they know that what awaited them that day would forever alter their lives. As they navigated the tranquil waters, they witnessed a squadron of unidentified flying objects, described as donut-shaped metallic discs, hovering in the sky above them. Suddenly, one of the objects malfunctioned, raining down a shower of metallic debris and molten slag onto their boat, injuring Dahl's son and killing their dog. News of the incident quickly spread, capturing the attention of none other than legendary pilot and UFO investigator Kenneth Arnold, who had recently made headlines with his own sighting of flying saucers. Arnold met with Dahl and listened intently as he told him of the encounter. But the mystery deepened when Dahl received a visit from a man in a dark suit, warning him to keep silent about what he had witnessed, threatening dire consequences if he did not comply. which to me sounds like the MO of the Men in Black. But normally they come in twos. Now, as the rumors and skepticism grew, the Maury Island incident attracted the attention of government agencies, including the FBI and Army intelligence. The case took an unexpected turn when two Air Force officers, Captain William Davidson and Lieutenant Frank Brown, arrived to investigate. However, tragedy struck once again when their plane mysteriously crashed, a B-52 bomber, by the way, killing both officers and raising suspicions of foul play.
So one thing to note is that that was not a B-52 bomber. That is a B-25 bomber, so they got that part wrong. But it really doesn't matter a whole lot in the whole grand scheme of things.
Not the Love Shack?
No, it was not the Love Shack. It was something different.
You said
So looking at Maury Island and just kind of the whole, I mean, I think the biggest thing I take from this is the Men in Black angle of this whole thing, and whether there's legitimacy to that, and whether this was the first time we really got this whole kind of mention of the Men in Black and that sort of thing. I mean, did they actually show up on site and say, and threaten these guys and talk about it and say, if you talk about this, dire consequences are going to befall you? There's lots of problems with the Maury Island case. You know, whether there was something that initially happened, it just got subsumed by a lot of nonsense and bullshit. And, you know, as far, I think on the legit or bullshit scale, I mean, we're not talking about Kenneth Arnold, but we're talking about Maury Island. I would have to lean on the bullshit side of this, Tunney. I think you probably would agree with me on that. There's lots of problems here, but at the same time, it's like something happened out there, or at least somebody thought something happened out there. I mean, a dog died, for fuck's sake. That's tragic any way you look at it. But what are your thoughts on Maury Island, Tunney? You read all this stuff and you watched the video, and I mean, is it complete fabrication, or is it just like, is it like one of those tall fishing tails, right? Somebody catches a little fish and by the time you get to the end of it, it's exactly. What do you think, man?
This fish you caught, filleted, and ate continued to grow for years and years after its death and consumption. I think the biggest telltale thing was you talk about the time and how this is not like a prevalent thing. So you're not out there trying to capitalize on it. And the fact that Dahl and Chrisman at the very earliest came forward with this 2 days after the Kenneth Arnold happening, from my research. Like, this is post June 26th that they're coming forward to anybody about anything. They've cooked up a story to try and market it. And the fact that they couldn't give the same story to the FBI, or at least that's what we're told. And the fact that Kenneth Arnold really wasn't buying it either, for the most part, in my opinion, you know, it just, this is bullshit.
Chronologically, it happens before Kenneth Arnold, but like you're saying, nobody comes forward to really talk about it till after the fact.
I mean, Kenneth Arnold landed that very after that very instance and told everybody he could about it.
Right. And these guys didn't mention anything until, hey, let's get, and it is like, you know, the fact that two military guys died in a plane crash. And like, I think this is like the first Air Force, like the Air Force had just been formed.
No. Well, I think it was formed after this.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's like, it's all very strange and tragic, and just like, if it was all bullshit, then what are we doing out here? Ray, your impressions on this event, the Maury Island incident, and everything you've learned here in the past 5 minutes about this.
This is a first and last time Ray is ever going to do this. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if that's
maybe
the
he's
case,
having a good
it's
time.
on
I hope you're having a good time.
I'm having a great time, just chilling with my boys. Although Tunney loves to cut into my SmackDown time, but nonetheless, it's worth it for you. Worth it for you, Dave.
Thanks, Ray.
No. So I'm naturally skeptical of all of this shit, but a lot of it makes more sense. This one doesn't make sense to me because everything you said. But the thing for me is, I'm imagining if that's me and you two on the boat, right? And my daughter's on the boat with us, and one of Dave's dogs is on the boat, or one of the pussies is on the boat. That's Tunney's cats. And something happens that causes Renaya to get knocked out and the animal to die. And I'm like, oh, beep, 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 beep. And then 2 days later, oh, by the way, no, I'm telling everybody, something killed my dog and hurt my kid. Telling everybody. So y'all chill for 2 days on that? Yeah, man, you can get the... What?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the big thing. Like, Tunney made a great point there, that As soon as Kenneth Arnold got off the plane in Yakima, he's like, hey, man, I don't know what the fuck this was, but there's something up there. And these guys are just kind of chilling with this whole 6 donut-shaped objects, dropping slag, killing my dog. And let me think about this for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, dog. And then if you're really someone worth your weight in whatever you want to weigh yourself in, I would have went and got some of that shit. Like, this is the shit that fell from the sky that killed my dog.
Well, they got it. And they showed it to Kenneth Arnold, and he's like, and they showed it to Smith as well, and they're like, I don't think it's anything that's spectacular.
They get it, or did they make something up?
Well,
they did. They made something bullshit.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever they gave them was nonsensical. So Maury Island has its problems, but Tunney, I think we both agree this is a very important piece of the puzzle as to everything that's going on, because you get to see the layers and like the variants as to, okay, this feels real, this not so much. You know, you're and I think, you know, what we'll talk about it at the end, but in one end, you've got Kenneth Arnold and United Airlines Flight 105 at one end. And then you got Maury Island, which is, you know, there's a lot to be said for contemporaneous sort of corroboration and people reporting things immediately rather than sitting around. Let me think how I can dramatize this the best way I can. So as we come into the tail end of this whole thing, there is something that I wanted to talk about, that Kenneth Arnold might have been a victim of a hitchhiker effect. And I mean, we've talked about a lot of people who go to Skinwalker Ranch, they come home and the phenomenon can follow them home. With Kenneth Arnold, one of the things that I learned about him is that he may have been followed by a sort of strange phenomena, came home with him and kind of hung around with his family after the fact. His daughter Kim discussed orbs in their home. They had paranormal experiences that may have altered Kenneth Arnold's view of what he had experienced. This caused him to believe there may have been a biological connection to what he experienced. It could all be linked to the paranormal. It might be linked to life after death, that sort of thing. It's all kind of very strange. Let me play another clip for you guys from Weaponized that talks about this potential paranormal connection to this sort of thing. This also came from Weaponized. So we're going to take a look at this, because this is a little bit strange when you start thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, you know, is this the first real documented kind of situation involving this sort of hitchhiker effect that people talk about? So let's listen in on this thing and see what we get.
Secondly, Kim Arnold reported that they started having these inexplicable paranormal effects in their home. Kenneth Arnold, after his sighting, I mean, she described an orb that sort of suddenly appeared in their home and went past the two daughters, Kim and her sister, and then went down into the kitchen past Kenneth in their home. Also, weird noises and sort of some poltergeist activity. She also described that Kenneth Arnold had changed his mind about what these objects that he had originally seen. And she described things like he thought that they might have some sort of biological content, and they might be alive. He also associated with these objects with somehow being associated with humans after they die, in, you know, the afterlife. So there was a lot of very weird, activity associated with the original nuts and bolts Kenneth Arnold story that nobody heard about for decades. And the whole sort of flying saucer meme took a hold in the press, both in the United States and globally. And suddenly we had all these nuts and bolts phenomena being described as flying saucers, even though Kenneth Arnold never had any intent on reporting flying saucers. But all of the paranormal stuff was completely ignored. And, you know, I've speculated to myself and to others that what would have happened if Kenneth Arnold had come right out and said, you know, these objects were may have been biological. They were probably self-luminous. They were emanating these sort of flashes of light, may have been biological, may have been associated with the afterlife, quote unquote. Can you imagine what the legend of UFOs would look like now if that had been promulgated with a lot of force in the media in the late 1940s?
A lot to unpack there, right? I mean, if you're going to start talking about this paranormal connection, like we've talked about on the show before, Tunney, you know that we talked about how the interconnected nature of this whole thing, and Is there more to this UAP UFO phenomenon than meets the eye? Is there a paranormal connection? Is there a consciousness connection? Is it related to life after death? Are they, like you mentioned earlier, we talked about what are they after if they've been here the whole time? What if they're after our souls or something like that and they're gathering that up? It gets pretty deep into all that sort of thing.
We've sold them a long time ago, so it's all good. You know,
Well,
we're impervious. We're
I'm
impervious to
like
the pain.
I'm like Ghost Rider. I have no soul to burn, that sort of things.
Hey, stay tuned for the rest of this episode, because as we go off the air, Dave's head is going to flame the fuck up just like Ghost Rider.
Penance stare doesn't work on me. I have no soul to burn. I love that line from Ghost Rider. But some weird stuff going on with Kenneth Arnold. I mean, and was he exposed to something in this sighting? Because he's the first one to really make this sighting and this correlation. I don't know if this stuff followed, E.J. Smith home or Captain Smith or any of that sort of stuff, or Dahl or Crispin had dealt with any sort of issues like that. But Kenneth Arnold certainly had some weird shit going on at home. And it does make you think, gosh, this whole notion that this stuff is more connected than we can possibly anticipate or appreciate. Maybe. What do you think, Tunney?
I mean, that's all possibilities. The deeper you get, the more you want to believe that the dots all connect themselves, right? You know what I'm saying? If you pull back far enough, it's really weird because sometimes you feel like, or I personally feel like, I can't get far enough away from it to truly grasp the entire picture. Like, I'm looking at this painting at the Louvre and I'm standing so fucking close to it that I only see 15% of it. I don't see the rest of it, right? And I feel like, unfortunately, that's kind of where we are, especially now in society, with all the diluting and distracting factors like social media. I mean, it's really hard to pull back and get a broader perspective. But this stuff is it's hard to put into words sometimes.
It's hard to grasp and get a hold of it. It just kind of wriggles free every time you think, this must be what it is. Somebody throws something else at you, see, and you kind of want to compartmentalize it and say, well, I want to keep UAPs here, and I want to keep the afterlife here, and I want to keep Bigfoot here, and I don't want the potatoes touching the beans, that sort of thing. But
at some point they intersect, and you gotta fucking figure out where the pavement hits the road and things of that nature.
Yeah, the data and the experience, and especially just the little bit that we've been doing on this so far, really makes you think that there's a lot more going on here than anybody say. Hey, Mike's on here, guys. He's showing up here at the tail end of this. Mike's in the house. Ray, say hi to Mike. Mike, this is Ray. Ray, this is Mike.
Hello, young
Ray
Michael.
Is jumping in here. Ray's jumping in here for the first time. And Ray, your thoughts on this interconnected stuff and how it relates to Kenneth Arnold, man?
I'm going to flip it in a different way, okay? Our bodies...
Are you going to flip it and reverse it?
Sure, if you're a fan. So our bodies are carbon-based, and because of our compositions of our bodies, there's so much absorption that happens through our pores. That's why we get sick. That's why that's why a lot of illnesses and a lot of viral bacterial things can spread easily by touch or by being around somebody or things of that nature. The orifices in our bodies. But anyway, long story short, our bodies can, through osmosis, garner different things. If this really is an otherworldly being, it makes sense to me from a tangible standpoint that the osmosis of him being within some type of range with it could possibly have affected him and followed him in a way, right? It's and maybe that sounds stupid when I'm saying it, but there had been nobody else before this point, to my knowledge, that had described it in the way that he had described it. And so it's not weird to me to see that, by the way, years later, I'm still seeing shit. And it'd be one thing if it was just him, but for his family that say the same things, it's kind of that osmosis, right? And so I'm wondering, is that kind of the thing? Because when you say hitchhiker effect to me seems psychological. This was not psychological. If other people are seeing the same things in different places, times, situations. So it makes me wonder if there's a physical aspect to the situation, aside from the whole, oops, I got abducted and probed type shit. Just being around it, is there a physical nature to that stays with you? It makes me wonder.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. You're allowed to go there because I'm going there on myself all the time anyway. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault, but anyway.
It's always Tunney's fault.
But no, like it probably is Tunney's fault. No, it's that CC Melissa. That exactly, Tunney. Thank you, my bestie, right there, all the way. I deserve my punishment. It's just fascinating that does this stuff glom onto you at some point, grab a hold of you, and come home with you. But like you're saying, Ray, it's not something that's personal to Kenneth Arnold because everybody else in his household and his family is seeing this sort of stuff. So who knows? But I mean, it is like they were saying on that episode, it's an aspect of the whole Kenneth Arnold thing, like even like kind of trying to dredge this out of ChatGPT and say, what do you know about this? I'm not finding a whole lot on this, but obviously you watch that clip that we saw. There's more to that. Kim Arnold is talking about weird shit going on in the Kenneth Arnold household and that sort of thing. So let's bring this thing home here because we've been on quite a while here. Kenneth Arnold would become reclusive over the years. He was stunned and flabbergasted at the refusal of so many to be appropriately curious or concerned about what he'd seen and experienced. But you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to do this last clip that we have here because I don't want anybody to take my word for it. Let's let the man himself tell us all about how disgusted he was and just the extremes that he thinks we would have to go to before anybody's going to actually pay attention to any of this sort of stuff. When you listen to a man like Kenneth Arnold tell you this himself, you start thinking, there might be something here to this thing. So let's look at this last clip here and listen to what Kenneth Arnold had to think about all of this nonsense and get into it.
An ordinary man in an ordinary street in America. But this man started the 1947 wave of sightings that swept the world when he claimed to have seen from his mountain rescue plane 9 disc-like objects, roughly 45 miles away, flying at a speed of approximately 1,500 miles per hour near Mount Rainier, Oregon. The date? June 24, 1947. Later, when asked by a reporter to describe how they flew, Arnold said their motion was like saucers skipping over water. In the papers the next day, the world first saw the term flying saucer. On June 24, 1977, 30 years to the day after he first sighted them, Ken Arnold consented to speak to us. He had refused to make any public statements for the last 5 years. It's easy to see that after 30 years, he's still angry at the disbelief.
Right here, we've seen something. I've seen something. Hundreds of pilots have seen something in the skies. We have dutifully reported these things. And we have to have 15 million witnesses before anybody's going to look into the problem seriously. Why, this is utterly fantastic. This is more fantastic than flying saucers or people from Venus or anything as far as I'm concerned.
The greatest surprise was when Arnold reported his sighting to the nearest U.S. military airbase. He found on the wall of the commander's office this classified gun sight photograph, which bore a remarkable resemblance to what Arnold claimed he had just seen, and Shaver had discussed 3 years before.
So that last part there is something that I did not know until I putting this episode together. He goes in and complains about this stuff. When he goes to talk about this to a military personnel, there on the wall is some gun camera footage or whatever the hell they had back in 47, showing stuff that looked a lot like what he'd seen. And this is like 3 years earlier. So you kind of think about that, Tunney, and I'm like, and then I start side-eyeing Maury Island a little bit more, and I'm like, well, maybe, but of course there's a corroboration issue in the lack of reporting it timely. But it's like, these things might have been flying around for a while before Kenneth Arnold ever saw this sort of thing, and why is this picture on this guy's wall? That sort of thing. So it's very interesting, but it does underlie the whole problem with this sort of thing. It's like, well, yeah, how much cumulative evidence do you need before somebody decides, maybe I should take a look at this. Maybe we should look at this more seriously. And you can argue that even today, it's still not being looked at seriously enough. But Ray, I want to go to you first on this one. You just watched Kenneth Arnold talk about that and kind of how just the disbelief that he's got as far as like, what the fuck, man? Why is nobody taking this seriously?
So this is unfair to him and unfair to a lot of people in this world. But the first thought I have, or normal, I think a regular thinking, non in the world person would think is this dude crazy? And that man comes off to me as very well put together, smart, salient, intelligent, and like he does not come off to me as a person who is very fanatical. who is very out there, who is very, pardon the pun, but outer space, spaced out type deal. He seems like, oh yeah, I'm a normal everyday dude. I go to work. I'm very well versed in my knowledge of things, and I am also appalled at what's going on. And that helps, I think, with the credibility from the eyes of a spectator. Because had you shown me a dude in this video who walked in there with and I'm not trying to make fun of nobody in any stretch of imagination, but looking like Kate McKinnon in the sketches on SNL, right?
Right.
If someone had walked in,
well, first of all, they came down, I was scratching my cooter, and they came up and they put the shit up my pooper when they were doing the probe, but I didn't appreciate that.
Exactly. If they'd have come in like that, and I'd be like, if you don't get this shit off my TV. But no, my boy came in straight suit, look good, look normal. I'll probably see him somewhere in an investment firm or some shit. He looked like a real dude. And that should not matter what you look like, how you are. But in the eyes of something so fantastical, like seeing an otherworldly being, that helps with the credibility of the belief. And we all three of us have talked about I believe half of what the government tells me and half of what they show me and none of what they tell me. So yeah, I would be like him. Dog, what are we doing? And for them to be like, oh yeah, by the way, you see this? Well, bitch, I told you this years ago.
Remember, Ray, they were white pelicans, buddy. White pelicans.
Because they be shining, right? At 9,000 feet in the air.
Shiny pelicans at 9,200 feet. Tunney, your thoughts on the Kenneth Arnold interview there at the end?
With what we've been doing for a decade, right? The three of us have been in on all of this quest of podcasting and meeting new people and interviewing people and trying to interact with new people. We've all had a chance to see a different side of a lot of parts of our culture and society. I like to think of myself as a really good judge of character. And I say that because I have the best friends, whether it's the group that I still hang out with and my boys from high school, whether it's the sports connections I have being in competition sports for a long part of my life, or now in podcasting. I'm surrounding myself with great people, and I can tell a large majority of the time when I'm being fed a gigantic line of bullshit. I don't feel like that at all when I listen to that man. I feel like a couple clips we might have had today or in the past, I felt that from people, but I do not feel that at all when I listen to that interview. Ding, 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 ding.
That is very well stated, Mr. Tunney. I think, I agree. Let's bring this thing home. Let's bring this home. Some final thoughts. So when we take a look at these three events, Kenneth Arnold, United Airlines Flight 105, Maury Island, this shows how the modern UFO era took shape almost instantly in the summer of 47. Arnold's sighting provides a foundational mystery, a serious witness, a strange aerial encounter, no definitive explanation. Then you go to Flight 105, reinforce the idea with trained air crews. They're also seeing unusual stuff. Maury Island, of course, by contrast, demonstrates how quickly the subject could become contaminated by sensationalism, opportunism, tragedy, and potential hoaxing. I think really the key takeaway from this early 1947 timeline leading into Roswell, of course, is the flying saucer era. It doesn't begin as one neat, isolated mystery. It's a mixture of credible testimony, reporting reports, official attention. There's some tragedy mixed in here. There's some immediate confusion. There's some exaggeration going on for sure. But Kenneth Arnold remains the strongest and most historically important, his sighting of the three of them. Flight 105 gives the story a lot of reinforcement. Maury Island is a warning that, you got to be a little bit careful because there's a lot of tangle of unexplained mixed in with unreliable. But then, of course, guys, not long after this stuff happens in the desert of New Mexico, arguably the most important UFO event in history is going to take place. Nothing would ever be the same. We'll get into that on the back half of the part 2 of the summer of 1947. It is verdict time, Tunney. We've already rendered our verdict that we think Maury Island leans more on the bullshit side of things. But as far as Kenneth Arnold and United Airlines Flight 105, which I'm going to link them together because I think they're very similar. I'm going to go first on this. I'm going to say these are all legit. Everything I've seen from Kenneth Arnold, the immediacy with which he reported this stuff, the corroboration of a whole flight crew on United Airlines Flight 105, 105. The fact that Kenneth Arnold never calls them flying saucers and never really says extraterrestrials, he's just reporting something weird and it takes on its own life from there. I find very little reason to doubt his version of events or to call it bullshit. It's probably, honestly, it's the initial sighting that started it all, but I would probably say this is the most legit one we've seen so far out of everything that we've covered on Unidentified History. Kenneth Arnold, and I put United Airlines Flight 105 in there as well, because there's absolutely no reason for a whole airline crew 1947 to lie. So I'm going to go legit on both of those. Maury Island is its own problematic sort of situation, but I'll go to you first, man. I know you've been the East German judge more often than not on these, but I have a feeling I know where you're going with this one.
3.6.
He fucked up the dismount.
What is this?
He
Is
fucked up
this
the
an episode
dismount.
of Big Five or what? I think what did
cage match give it, Tunney?
Dave, you're fucking crushing it today. That's awesome. Like you do all the time, but it's just the next level that you took the show to today with everything that you put out there and how we did it. This show continues to get better and better, and hopefully we can all just continue to get better like you are. This is the closest thing to legit that we've had. Kenneth Arnold is legit at the very least, right? Like you can't deny it. I talked about it before. That intuition you have when people are trying to sell you a load of crap, hey, I got a bridge, I got a swamp to sell you, okay, cool. That's not this. And the fact that it is a different approach than almost every other kind of bullshit it's been. Yeah, it's the most legit thing. I echo your sentiments 100%, Dave.
Yeah, and that's not to say that we've thought the other stuff was not legit. I mean, there's been some problems and some things we couldn't quite wrap.
But there's levels.
Trinity was
there's levels of believability.
Trinity had issues with it. We all know that. The Ghost Rockets, we're like, okay, there's some legitimacy to here. Gosta Carlson and all that sort of stuff. And the Battle of LA, we had a lot of trouble figuring out, well, what is this? What actually happened in Los Angeles in 1942. Ray, this is your first foray into this. So the Kenneth Arnold and the United Airlines Flight 105 on this. Do you consider this legit or is it bullshit?
We, the people of the jury, find that you said the verdict, right? I want to use some legal jargon like nola contrario or some shit bullshit like that.
Wait, I object.
Sustained. Go ahead, Ray.
No, I think this is the best episode I could have jumped on.
Yes. You picked the perfect episode. This is the best one we've done so far. The most important one we've done so far.
You think he's hooked, Dave? You think he's hooked?
I hope so. Because if you thought this was, you better come back for Roswell, man, because that's gonna be fucking
my guy.
Crazy.
If you know what I have to deal with in the next couple months, you might not be seeing me on a lot of podcasts that much.
Yeah, this could be a good outlet though for
it. May be.
Vacation,
I do it. Well, you call it vacation. I call it a new job. If you know what I mean.
I got you.
But no. So this is the perfect episode for someone like me who I wouldn't call myself skeptical, but I'd call myself ignorant on a lot of the field because I don't know much other than, things you hear and you see on big media. And this story has so much validity to it and so much believability to it and so much credibility to it that I can't help but say it sounds legit. We all have our misgivings about the Maury Island incident and all that, but the rest of this stuff, especially your boy Ken Arnold, Doug, yes, if I saw a dude today, I'd be like, man, they screwed you over, my boy. I don't know what's going on with them. Like, I believe everything that man said. I believe everything in the flight crew. I believe all of it. And so this is the perfect one for me because y'all didn't bring me up here with some Kay McKinnon type shit. Like, y'all brought me on here with some shit that is like, take to the bank. So, yeah, legit, not guilty or guilty depending on whatever, you're the lawyer. You decide.
Well, I already decided. I think this is the most legit event that we've done so far, the most important event that we've covered so far. And it really kicks off the summer of 1947 that changes ufology as we know it. Everything changes from here forward. This is, like I said, this told Tunney before you got on, Ray, this is the attitude era of ufology right here, the summer of 1947.
So I missed WrestleMania 2?
Yeah, you missed WrestleMania 2. You missed WrestleMania.
No, WrestleMania 2 was okay.
You missed like WrestleMania 8, 9, and 10.
No.
Yeah,
no.
Ray,
this man made me watch.
Okay.
Tony, you don't understand.
Okay.
This man made me watch a David San Martino match. I will never forgive Dave for making me watch David San Martino.
I'm sorry, not sorry.
Corporal Kirshner?
Reese's.
What I'm not sorry about, though, is that, Ray, you were here to cover this episode of Unidentified History with us. That is it for this one. Like I said, between now and covering Roswell, I am, for my wife, I'm going to talk about the ice wall in Antarctica and do my own research and draw my own conclusions as to, is there anything behind the wall? You know, is there some big conspiracy? Are they hiding something in Antarctica? I doubt it, but because my wife seems to be very interested in this topic and she knows how good of a researcher I can be, it's like, fine, babe, I will effort it and look into it. So we will cover that on the next episode of Unidentified History. And then, yeah, we're going to go into Roswell. And boy, if you thought the rabbit hole was deep on this one, it gets a lot deeper.
Have y'all been?
Way deeper.
Have either of y'all ever been to Roswell?
I've never been out to Roswell.
It's so cool.
You've been there, huh,
yeah,
Ray?
It's so cool.
Is it? There's not a lot out there.
No, it's not. But they really play into the UFO thing. Like the McDonald's we stopped at going through is shaped as a UFO. It is so cool out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we have like out on the way from here to Vegas, they got this place called Alien Beef Jerky, and it's got a UFO shaped hotel out in the middle of nowhere,
cool, yeah.
and Baker, California, where you got the world's largest thermometer, and this.
we have Mars Cheese Castle.
Okay,
yeah, I don't think that's the same Mars, but okay,
different, but
well, that's the best we can do here. It's got to have
Mars.
cheese.
Name of the company that owns M&M.
Ray, Mike's telling us don't go to Roswell in the summer.
Obvious reasons.
Well, no, Mike,
Are you hot? It's hot.
So, Mike, New Mexico is better than if you go to Arizona or Southern California.
Yeah.
As a dude who has family, half of my family's from Phoenix, I'd rather be in Roswell.
Yeah, bro. Bakersfield's not fun in summer. Indian Wells for contact in the desert is not going to be fun. It's hot
shout out to
there,
Death Valley.
Yeah, Death Valley. Oh, no, you don't go anywhere near Death Valley.
That's what I'm talking about.
They won't even let you out into Death Valley in summer unless they know that, because if you run out of gas or your car breaks down,
over, baby.
It's over. Done. And this episode of Unidentified History is over as well. Ray, now that you're verified, I got suspended. Ray got verified. How does that work out, man?
I have no
How
choice.
does that work out? Ray, where can people follow you on social media?
This is where I put the meme of Thanos with the thing that all things are balanced.
Are they?
Are they? Dave was always on Twitter. I never was. Now I'm always on Twitter. Dave can't. It's all things about.
You should see the amount of shit he's posting in the Bandwagon Nerds chat now, Dave.
I wish I could, but obviously
I just said fuck it, man. I got tired. But also, it's easier for me to verify if I posted some shit or not because Patrick is always busy, But anyway, it's Rey Cash, R-E-Y as in Mysterio, C-A-S-H as in dollars. Follow Chairshot at Chairshot Media. We are not verified. Follow Nefarious Means. They are not and probably never will be verified, but nonetheless. And we got another shit coming in various times of days, whatever. You know what it is.
Tony, I feel bad. You can't outraise social media anymore. It makes me feel empty
I'm good.
inside.
I don't have to do shit.
I feel more soulless than I normally do. But where
Dave,
can people
I don't
follow
have to
you
do
on
a damn
social
thing
media?
if Tunney wants to. By all means, please advocate.
I have so many things added to my plate. And it's good that I am so thrilled that Ray is announcing his own social media.
It hurts my soul too. Hurts my soul too, Dave.
I love my brother Ray. I want to shout out Mike for just tuning in and being a listener. Like, come on the show one day or something, man, or whatever. Thanks for the follow back. I followed Mike. Go follow Mike. It's right there at Whistling Mike.
That's Twitter.
Give him a follow there on X. Yeah, give him a follow on X.
Doing it right now.
Follow me at PC Tunney, like Ray said, Chairshot Radio Network on all your favorite streaming platforms, thechairshot.com, prowrestlingtees.com/thechairshot, and most importantly today, attitudeofaggression.com, where Dave has made some amazing different changes, and it's just a beautiful site to go on, and all the information is there. Like I said before, I'm so blessed. These are two of my best friends right here, and I just love getting together with them, and I can't wait till we talk about the ice wall. Is there a chance we have an ice dragon down there? Is there anything going on Game of Thrones wise that we don't even know about? Shout out to the Nine Kingdoms. I'm sorry, I couldn't get out of here without that. Another part of the Attitude of Aggression.
The White Walkers or the Frost Kings or the what are they called? The Yetis? What's my boy in the
They're White Walkers.
Yeah, that shit. Yeah.
Mike, I will be before we do I think before we do Roswell, I will give you a message, Mike, and let you jump on for that, because I got your number, and we're going to need all the help we can get for Roswell. That's going to be one of the deepest dives possible. But as Tunney said, if you like what you're seeing, I promise you guys, if I ever get a human to actually look at my case on X, they'll probably reinstate me. But whenever that happens, who the hell knows? But until then, go to attitudeofaggression.com. check out the Attitude of Regression's YouTube channel. Lots of stuff going on there. And by all means, follow these guys and follow Whistling Mike on X as well for all your unidentified means. But that's going to do it for this episode of Unidentified History. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This was a big one and probably the best one that we've done so far. And I hope everybody enjoyed all the video and tying everything together as well as we could. We will catch you next time. What's behind the wall? I guess we're going to find out. And then it's off to Roswell.
Probably a door.
That's going to do it.
And a room.
We'll catch you guys soon. Take care, everybody.
With furniture.